The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 71.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Thank you for joining us on the EL. Today we have Michael Anderson, author of The Experiment. Discover a revolutionary way to manage stress and achieve work-life balance. Welcome, Michael, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Thanks, Wade. I'm excited to be here.
Will you take just a moment to introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about you personally?
Yeah, so the short story about me is that I've always been good at the scoreboard of life. So I've always been good at achieving, but I found myself, even though I was achieving the things I set out to do, I wasn't happy. And I didn't have any internal joy and fulfillment. And the really long story, really short, is I hit my my low point, and my low point personally had to do with a divorce, a nasty business lawsuit, and drugs and alcohol. And it caused me to really reflect in my life. And so I earned a master's in spiritual psychology, and that degree helped me out so much. And I saw a lot of my other entrepreneur and executive friends going through the same thing, that now what I do, my company's called Executive Joy, and I teach competitive driven people like you and me how to become happier.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing that, Michael, and thank you for being transparent, because I think that's what makes the best guests that we have on this actual show is those that are just completely transparent, and you already have been. So with that being said, now let's jump right into your book, The Experiment, which was just made available for purchase on September 8th, 2014. And Michael, we're going to move quickly, but we're going to cover the top questions that our listener/reader would like to get answered. And the first one is, what was the inspiration behind writing The Experiment?
So The Experiment, and we'll talk about this in more detail as we go through this, is it's a business fable. So it's a story, and it's a story about a guy named Dennis, who's an entrepreneur. And the one thing I didn't mention is I founded and bootstrapped 3 international software companies in my time, and then now my latest speaking business, so four international companies. And the main character is Dennis, who's the entrepreneur, and he's going through a tough time. And what happens is he meets a coach, Robert, on a train, and in a chance meeting, and then it goes through a couple of their coaching sessions. And so when you say, what's the inspiration writing this book, when people read it, they ask, are you Dennis, the business owner, or are you Robert, the coach? And I go, well, actually, I'm a little bit of both, because I've been through the tough times, and I've been through all the stuff that us entrepreneurs go through, and now tools and skills that I have learned, what I do is I also help people go through the same changes I've went through.
Excellent. So based on our conversation before we even started today, we started talking about how many books will actually come out on entrepreneurship every single month. So this next question is really an opportunity to differentiate yourself. And so that's, what makes your book different from others regarding the same topic?
Well, like me and you, there's so many books that come at me and that people send to me. I have so many books that people have just given to me and I've never gotten to. And then the ones I do read, sometimes they're 300, 250, 300 pages, and there's good info, but I'm like, man, why wasn't this book like 60 pages? There's like 60 pages of great information in here. So my book, it's written in a story, so it's really quick and easy to read. And it's 150 pages, and to be honest, it's a space and a half, so it's really quick to get through, but it's packed full of real life scenarios. And so if we, and again, I've been through all the stuff that I talk about. I've been through. I've had the tough times. I've been stressed. I've had problems with a spouse, etc. I mean, this is from what works in real life. And it talks a lot about the mindset of us competitive driven people, the creators of the world, and what we have to go through mentally and emotionally, and in a way spiritually, to really be at the top of our game.
With the way that you laid out the book, how do you want the reader to engage with it? Is this the kind of book they should read from beginning to end, or is this one they can actually go in and cherry pick different ideas out of?
Yeah, because it is a story, and it is so quick. Yeah, I would say it's pretty much read it from the beginning to end. It's got stuff called out. It's got exercises in it. One unique thing you talked about, what's unique about this. A, it has exercises in it. B, you can download the exercises, so it's easy to fill out. And the third thing that's unique about it is once you get done with the an accountability program, that you can go on to the website, declare what you're going to change in your life, and get a video series emailed to you to give you support and to make changes in your life that way. Because it's great that I have this cool book. What's more important is you making changes in your life to significantly go through personal transformation yourself.
Absolutely. There was a time when I very first started reading, getting a reading habit, I actually, I would skip over the questions in the book. I would read the question and just move on. I didn't really answer it. I never really saw the book as engaging. And I took a writing class of all things in college that actually told me, he was talking about what you need to read. And one was, a book, a pencil, and a highlighter, and that was true reading for comprehension. And when starting to do that, that meant that, okay, now I was answering those questions. And I think they talk about, for me to read through a book and not take any notes and not highlight, I only got, a certain percentage of it. But I think that tripled or quadrupled by the time I had actually, now I love when a book engages with me. I feel like it makes me think and I get the most out of it. So I appreciate what you're talking about there, that how you wrote it, and for it to really be, I think it'll create a lot of change for those
I hear you.
individuals.
And there's nothing more fun than going back to a book that you highlighted and getting all that information in like 5 minutes, re-engage with yourself.
Yeah. One other thing on that was how you see who you were. I mean, I don't know how many times I've read Think and Grow Rich, but I can go back to the very first copy I ever read, because I start a new one every time that I'm going to completely read through it. But I do the same thing that you're talking about. But if I go through to read my notes, I might be talking about a business that I started, this many years ago. And when I'm answering those questions, I'm answering them based off of where I was in life at that point. And then, it's kind of cool to see kind of flashback of, I remember when I was there and doing this and thinking about that. So, yeah, I think it's great to keep those books, be able to look back at them.
Absolutely.
So, Michael, we're to my favorite part. Now that we know the background behind your book, let's take a deep dive into the content. And so I'm going to hand over the mic, and if you can just really act like you're sitting down with one of your friends, and he's asked you or she's asked you, tell us more about your book. So if you can spend the next 5 to 10 minutes and really lay it out for us.
Absolutely. So there's a guy, Dennis, and Dennis is the everyman entrepreneur. And the way I wrote it is that these are the most common things that I went through, and the people that I speak to and coach and train and everything else we go through as well. And Dennis, he's separated from his spouse. His wife moved out with the kids a little while ago. So their relationship is strained. Dennis is going through cash flow problems for the first time in his life. He has so much anxiety because cash is finally tight in his business, and he's growing, and his growth is leveled off for the first time in his career as well. And so he's sort of thinking of himself as a failure. He is really having issues stepping up as a leader and getting to the next step with the size of his business. He is out of shape. He's not sleeping well. He's drinking too much. He doesn't have any passion. He's in this place where it's like he's just fixing problems. All he's doing is fixing problems, and he's not working on solutions. And he's just in I don't want to say depression. He's not at that part yet. He's just not engaged. He doesn't know where his passion is, and he doesn't have any balance in his life. It's just like he's just getting there, just trying to get to the next day, just to make sure the wheels don't fall off the bus. So and I don't know if anybody out there can ever experiences any of that, right? That's all totally new to us. But what happens is there's just basically a chance meeting, and he gets connected with this guy, and the guy seems pretty wise. And long story short is the guy's a business coach. And what's unique about this is because a lot of us have heard about coaching. Some of us may or may not have a mentor. This is about him. And it goes through 3 sessions. It goes in detail about the sessions and about how Dennis is looking at his life, how Dennis is looking at his problems. And then Robert helps him really figure out what the true problem is, and then figure out solutions. Help either Robert will give his insight, or help Dennis figure out the solutions to his own problems. So it's really great because you get to see how that can apply to your life as well. And then after each one of these, there's a 3-question exercises. So even if you can get, like Wade, like you said, you like to get into the exercises now, even if they're just thought-provoking questions, they really tie it back to what you're going through as well. And then, so the first session is that he talks about, and this is something we talk about, is ownership and control. Now, I've went through a lot of psychology courses and degrees and those type of things, and I do a lot of speaking to entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs are awesome, but sometimes it's funny because I'll be scheduled to do maybe a 90-minute talk keynote, and they'll say, "Hey, Mike, I can't make your keynote. I got to leave early, but can you just boil all your education down to one sentence? Just give it to me in one sentence." And it's entrepreneurs are awesome because they want all this 5 years, 10 years of education down to one sentence. And I go, well, absolutely, it's control. And what happens when we can figure out what in our life we can control and what we can't, our life totally changes. Because anxiety is about trying to control stuff we can't control. And so when I look at the times where I'm in anxiety, it's always when I'm worried about things and trying to control other people, other situations. Instead, when I put my control and I really take ownership for where I'm at in life, then that's personal transformation. That's when we can actually totally change the state of mind that we go through life with. And to me, this is a story about personal transformation. This is Dennis's personal transformation, where he goes and he changes the focus of his life onto what's really important and what really makes a difference in his life. And then what we talk about also in this process, and this is still in the first session, is compassion. So what I mean by that is we're always so hard on ourselves. I know a lot of us have this little voice in the back of our head always telling us how we didn't do things perfectly, how so-and-so is smarter than us or making more money or driving a better car. Well, what we can do is we can change that voice, and so it's compassionate, and it actually, instead of breaking us down, it really builds us up. And that's a big part of what I teach, because the core of this of the messages here and all of my messages are that we really work on the relationship with ourselves. Because when we can come into this kind, loving relationship with ourselves, everything else in our world changes. So it's by changing the external by focusing internally. And then we talk about experiments and why it's called the experiment. And this is really fun. It's because when we want to make changes in our lives, if we call these changes experiments, they're much easier to do. For example, if I have to run a marathon, and in order to run a marathon, I have to run 4 times a week for the next 30 weeks. That's a big commitment. But if I said, no, let's just do an experiment. Instead of me committing to the next 30 weeks of running 4 times a week, which my brain rejects because of these different mental, because that's the way the brain works. What I'm going to do is I'm going to experiment and just run twice next week. And then I see what's the best time for me to run. Is it before work? Is it before after work? Do I have the right shoes or whatever? Instead of trying to analyze all this stuff, I just jump in and experiment. And that it just makes changes in my life so much more accessible, because the only way to fail in an experiment is not to try it. So many of us learn, whether it's my book or other books or speakers or whatever, we know the changes we want to make in our lives, but we never go ahead and make them. Well, by following this method, by calling them experiments and by playing with them, we change people's definition of success. We change it from being perfect to playing in the game and figuring out and learning to see what works.
You basically just gave us a bird's eye view of, I don't know another way of explaining this. So you basically just gave us a bird's eye view of what's in your book. And now I tell the authors all the time that this question's fairly mean. And that's I'm asking you now to give us a satellite view. That business person that you said will come up to you and ask you to put 10 years of experience into one sentence. I'm about to do that to you as well. That's if the reader can only take one concept, principle, or action item out of everything you just told us, everything that you just laid out for us, what would you want that to be?
Well, I want people to start having experiments experimenting with their lives. So if something's not working the way you want to, try other things. Realize that it may, quote unquote, succeed and it may fail, but just try things. Put yourself out there and be okay. Be okay with the traditional concept of failure. Instead of focusing on, do you do it perfect or not, just go and make a change. And if it works, stay with it. And if it doesn't, do something else. But get into action and get out of this inaction.
Michael, this next question is really kind of a different one in that I'm asking you for a favorite quote that you have from your book that you actually wrote. And if you don't kind of have one off the top of your head, what's one that's resonated with your audience so far?
Well, what they like most is there's no way to fail an experiment. The only way you fail in an experiment is by not conducting it.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And this last question that we're going to go over is also one of my favorites because it helps build the reading list. And now my reading list is absolutely massive. Because when I first started asking this question, I thought I'd get the same books over and over again, and we have not. We're on episode 71, and we've really got a wide variety of different books that people have suggested. And so, like I talked about earlier, when you ask questions and you get the reader to engage with your book, a lot of times that can create a paradigm shift. And so I'm asking of you is, what's a book that you've read that has had a huge impact on your life, created a paradigm shift, and really helped you move forward?
I'd say that would be Authentic Happiness by Martin Seligman. And he's the father of what they call positive psychology.
Perfect example. I've never even actually heard that. Is that a newer book or older?
It's older, and the funny thing is, it's a short book, and you only need to read the first half. So I'm gonna even make it easier for you. Martin Seligman, Authentic Happiness.
Well, that's perfect because we have a lot of, the word's kind of universal sometimes, but busy/productive entrepreneurs that are listening right now, and so them knowing they only have to read the first half is perfect. Well, excellent. Well, Michael, before we depart, can you recommend the best way for listeners to get more information on you and your book, The Experiment? And please, as always, I try and explain this to the authors. This is a plug, not a plug-free zone, but a plug zone. So please mention anything that will create value for our audience here today.
Yeah, and I know I got carried away on some of the book stuff, but it talks about leadership. It talks about relationships, whether they're work relationships, home relationships. It talks about authenticity. It talks about all this different great stuff. It talks about creating new habits, time management, et cetera, in there. So the book website is experimenttoday.com. experimenttoday.com, and there's all the different links on there to pretty much everything you want. And Wade, I appreciate so much. And my goal in life is really to be of service to people. And so if you buy the book and you're a listener to this, if you buy the book and email a receipt to info@executivejoy.com, that's info@executivejoy.com. Anybody who does that, I'll send a 5-minute inspirational audio called the Procrastination Toolbox. It's a great way to get your butt moving. It normally sells for about $9 or $10. So if you buy the book and review it on Amazon, and you email the screenshot of your review to info@executivejoy.com, and I will send you our e-course. It's called No More Excuses, the 7-Step Guide to Moving Through the Fear and Into Your Purpose. So if you really want to be more engaged, find your purpose, all you got to do is buy the book, review it. Doesn't matter what your review says. I just want your opinion out there. This normally sells for $199, but I just really want people to be engaged. I want this message to get out here. I appreciate everything. And if you haven't found out already, my personal website for my speaking and coaching and training is executivejoy.com, executivejoy.com. And I love to hear from people. If there's any way I can help anybody out there, just really reach out and let me know.
Michael, thank you very much for those different offers. And it sounds like there's a huge amount of value in those. And we will, just to let you know, we'll have those resources actually posted on our show notes, part of our page. So just in case someone's running or doing something where they don't have access, it's amazing how many people listen on their mobile device these days, where they sometimes don't have access to look up exactly what you were just talking about. So we will have that in the resource page, so they'll be able to go check that out.
Good.
Michael, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your book with us.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks again for listening in today. If you would like to get your hands on The Experiment or any of the other resources mentioned by Michael, Just look at the show notes at the elpodcast.com.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.